welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Matcha, where we dive into the bittersweet moments of the teenage experience. Just like matcha, both can often be messy and imperfect, but that's what makes them beautiful in the end. In today's episode, I'm super excited because I have a super special guest with me here today. She's going to be a junior at my school. We're both involved in student leadership together, which is where I met her, and I'm super excited to have her here with me today. Let's welcome Cam.
Hey guys, my name is Cameron. I'm a part of student leadership with Sophia, and I just want to say I love her so much and wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me on the show. A little bit about me. I'm in student council. This is going to be my second year. I'm involved in numerous activities, numerous leadership roles, numerous clubs, I should say. Just to name a few, I'm part of Service Club, Mock Trial, NHS, CSF, plenty more, admissions. I just went to Georgetown, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was more focused on a law and law internship. Georgetown was student advocacy, so learning how to advocate for people properly to go into the law field. And then I am also the vice president of my Jack and Jill chapter. Whoop, whoop. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I'm just super excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so getting started in leadership, what inspired you to join student council in the first place?
Something that really inspired me was having experience in the role. I've been a part of student council since third grade, going up to eighth grade, where I was my class president. Knowing that I had that experience and taking a break from it freshman year was also a big deal, kind of like taking a step back and analyzing like how our school was and seeing if I was really needed in that role. And also understanding that I have a big personality, a big voice, a big opinion, and taking that time, taking that talent to being able to, advocate for my classmates, advocating for my friends, because I know certain activities they really like, certain activities they really like, certain themes they liked, and that just not really being heard amongst our freshman student council. So taking that into sophomore year, taking their ideas into sophomore year, that really motivated me to join student council. But knowing that I'm a very talkative person and knowing that I know a lot of people, knowing that I like talking to people, that really also just pushed me a little bit more towards student council and just people being like, hey, Cam, join. So, yeah.
Yeah, what made you not do it your freshman year?
It was just, I felt overwhelmed coming in freshman year and just knowing that, like, myself, I can get very overwhelmed. I can overthink a lot. Just knowing that about myself and knowing that I had been a part of student council for 7 years prior, it was just like, you don't have to do it. Like, you're going to be fine. But also knowing, like, I should let somebody else, like, have a chance to do it. And I also didn't really think I would, like, get voted on because I didn't know a lot of people, like, when the voting happened. But, like, afterwards, I started talking to more people, so I think just being overwhelmed freshman year was a big thing, but looking back on it, I know I should have joined because I was like, girl, like, I literally did nothing my freshman year, and that would have been perfect to do, especially for myself, especially for my personality, so.
You mentioned that you had a lot of other leadership experiences like Georgetown, Jack and Jill. Can you tell me more about your role in each of those and what you do?
So for Jack and Jill, I've been involved in Jack and Jill since I was in third grade. My mom put me and my little brother into it. I just got into the vice president role last year. I was elected. I'm a part of the executive board now. And just because I know my chapter didn't really have a lot of participation, a lot of spirit, kind of the same thing with our school, I just felt that I could do a lot more lifting up spirits, just talking to more people, listening to their opinions, because I know not a lot of people like to share their opinions because they feel like they won't be heard. So knowing that I have that sense of personality to be able to like, hey, like, talk to me, like, what do you want to know? What do you want to do? That really pushed me to do Jack and Jill. I've been a part of Girl Scouts as well. I don't really necessarily, there are no leadership roles in Girl Scouts specifically, but I like to mentor the younger girls. So like the Daisies, the Brownies, those are really like my babies. So I'm like, okay, yeah, like, let me help you. Just that pushed me to do that for Girl Scouts. And then Georgetown was just an overall experience. There was really no leadership role there, but that was more of like teaching you how to be a leader. And that was really important to me because it was more of fine-tuning my skills rather than teaching me new things. Because you can't really teach leadership. You either have it or you can gain it. Like, it's not necessarily taught. So knowing that about Georgetown, I felt like that was a better opportunity rather than Stanford, which was just like teaching you how to be a leader. I was like, I don't need that. But Georgetown and the Supreme Court, they just taught me how to be a leader in the roles I want to go into. So in law, that was a big deal to know how to like command a courtroom, knowing how to talk to people, advocate for people. And that really transfers over to school and the student council. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point that you brought up. And I've been thinking about this a lot because I think that the overall generalized term of leadership, I feel, is something that's innate, if that makes sense. Like, and I know like this may sound kind of controversial, but I really do feel like certain personality types just gravitate more towards leadership positions. Like if you're really extroverted, I know both of us are pretty extroverted.
Yes.
We just felt like we were more inclined to doing leadership things. And although like if you are a quiet person, that's totally okay. You just have to kind of just put yourself out there a little more. You can go to those trainings where they do teach you how to be a leader, but I think for us, we're more like the type of people to more so fine tune, like you said, fine tune our skills. So for example, over the summer I just did a public speaking course at my local community college, and I would say I've always been a confident. Actually, I take that back. I haven't always been confident. I've just had the ability to express myself and articulate my ideas and my concerns, all of that, which is why I wanted to join student council. The reason why I joined public speaking was more so I could learn the certain devices and tools that you need in order to be a good public speaker. So I learned how to talk at certain rates. I learned how to talk at certain speeds. I knew how to work the room when I'm talking and how to really resonate with each person when I'm talking. I think those are really important things to be a good leader because you also have to know how to include everybody. So for example, like when I'm walking the room, you really have to incorporate everybody and really try to make a connection with each person. And connecting that back to my point, a lot of good leaders have these like really big personalities, but you really have to know when to step down.
Right.
And I think that's the hardest part because like I said, when these people who have big personalities bring their ideas to the table, it's often hard for other people who often have good ideas to also speak up. So just knowing that in order to be a good leader, you have to be selfless and you have to let other people bring their ideas forth to the table. So yeah. What's your favorite part about being involved in various student leadership organizations?
Specifically, I'll talk about student council for right now. Just planning events. I'm a big planner. I like to plan things out. I'm very goal oriented. So that's one of my favorite parts about student council. And just like seeing my visions come to life. So like I planned our prom last year. That was a really big experience for me, and like going to see like my vision like actually coming to life, like seeing the venue, seeing the decorations. That was something that was like, okay, I know why I joined student council now. More for Jack and Jill, being in that leadership position right now, just organizing events, planning meetings. That's something I really struggle with, is planning meetings and being able to like put them on, and just connecting with even bigger organizations like Google, Microsoft, just understanding like there's a difference. So the connections are going to be different. And that's something I think Jack and Jill has really taught me. Girl Scouts has taught me like to connect to younger kids. I love kids. They're so cute to me. So knowing like, oh yeah, like come talk to me, like being welcoming, that's something Girl Scouts has taught me. The Supreme Court really taught me how to like connect with people in the generation above me, being able to talk to people who have more education than I do, who are more well off than I am, seeing as they're adults. But being in those law positions, that's something that, like having that certain confidence in yourself, that's something the Supreme Court really taught me. Going to Georgetown, that taught me how to mingle with people more my age, and being able to advocate for people around me, and being able to be like, hey, like, what are your ideas about this? But not taking on a leadership role necessarily, but being able to like put all of our ideas together and being able to present it. That's something Georgetown taught me a lot, was being able to present stuff. So yeah.
So was Georgetown a camp or was it like an internship?
It was more so both. It was an internship, more so putting me in the position to go to the Supreme Court and going to the DEA. That was something that was also really big. Being able to go inside the White House, mingle with the Speaker of the White House. That was something that was also a really big deal. But it was more of a camp, providing like the peer experiences and the like shopping experiences, like touring Georgetown, touring DC itself, touring other colleges. So I would say both, but it provided both a camp-like experience and an internship. So yeah.
I love that. And then can you share a project or decision from your leadership experiences that you feel made a real difference?
I would say specifically going to Jack and Jill, planning our first planning meeting of the year. That was something that was a really big deal and something that me and my executive board took really big time on, to plan the planning meeting. So that was a big thing. I saw like my vision come to life. Like, okay, like that was a time for everybody to get involved, a time for everybody to be like, hey, I have this idea, hey, I have that idea, and us taking notes, like us incorporating that into our future year to come. It's just, that was a really big deal to me. And then planning prom, that was another thing. I didn't know I was going to be able to. I was talking to our leader and she was like, if you want to, you can. I was like, yeah. So seeing that vision come to life was also a really big deal. And like seeing spirit weeks come to life, seeing spirit rallies, and seeing the participation, the excitement some of the kids have is also a really big thing of mine.
Yeah, from the student leader perspective, I really think it's so rewarding to see when the things that you have spent so much time planning come to life. Also seeing the people's reactions to the event, like, and the outcome of it is really, really important to me. Like, I always love when people are saying, like, how much fun they've had at the events that I'm planning or how much they love the podcast episodes that I'm putting out. Just seeing things from the organizational standpoint and seeing how the outcomes play is really, really important to me. And that really motivates me to plan more events, put out more content for you guys. So, yeah. And then what do you think people don't realize about the role of student leaders?
It takes a certain kind of person to do it. It takes a certain level of confidence that you have to have, a certain level of time management that you have to have. So being able to, like how you said, work a room, knowing how to speak loudly, knowing how to command a certain space, knowing your self-worth, knowing that you have like the self-confidence to be able to say your opinion, knowing how to like share ideas, knowing how to mingle. Those were all things that student council like really helps you with, and that's somebody I would recommend to do student council with. So if you have like any of those certain personalities or those character traits that you want to like show off and like demonstrate to your peers, like, hey, you could come talk to me, that's something I would really do. Student council is definitely the place for you. But even if you don't have it, like understanding like, hey, like I don't have it, but I can get that, like that's also something you should do as well.
I think since both of us are student leadership, I think people don't understand how much confidence and courageousness it takes. Like, it is not easy to stand in front of a lot of people, to speak at rallies, to speak in front of large amount of people. Like, although it may seem pretty effortless, because when I see like other student leaders in front of everybody, they make it look pretty effortless. But I know like when I'm in front of people, I get scared. Like, even though I don't show it, I do get scared. And it is really admirable for student leaders to just put themselves out there, and that's not something that everyone can do. So also just giving grace to your student leaders is a big thing, I feel. So how do you think student council shapes the overall culture of a school?
I think it just shapes the spirit of it. It shapes the environment, the overall vibe of the school. If you don't have a very like hype student council, then it tends to like demonstrate in the student rallies, the dances, the spirit weeks. But having like a really exciting, a really like a student council that really wants to like make the school environment like a better place, and making spirit week more fun and dances more fun and participation levels coming up, I think that like tiers it in a more positive way. And I think that really shows like when students like 8th graders come to tour our high school and they see like our participation in like whatever we're doing and like our excitement, our spirit, I think that really leads more people to come to our school. And I think that sometimes like when they see us like not doing a lot or like not seeing like a lot of promotion, like, hey, like come or whatever, I think that's like, oh, like your school doesn't really do that. And like comparing to our other like Catholic schools in our area, I just think that shows like where we are in like the standings, not like it's competition, but just knowing that we could do more. And I think our student council now is like really putting an effort, especially our seniors, seeing as it's their last year, but they're very like, we should do all of this, we should do all of that. And like understanding like we should take certain stuff out in order for us to have a better school environment, better school spirit. I think that's something that also like demonstrates our school spirit.
Yeah. And then how do you see your passion and leadership connecting to your passion in law?
I just think that my roles in leadership and my spirit and my personality and my overall resume really demonstrates to say colleges, like, oh, she does all this, she does all that, like she must be like a very like outgoing person. And I think that really demonstrated itself when I went to Georgetown, like getting that invitation, or even Stanford getting that invite was just like, oh, like, okay, like they know like who I am and that I do a lot.
How did you get invited to Georgetown and Stanford and all of that?
I'm a very big person on like going to college expos and getting connected to the college representatives that go there, and just putting my resume like on College Vine. I'm also on that, just to put my resume out there and be like, hey, this is my information. Like if you have an intern for this, or if you need an intern for that, like just call me, like I'll do it. Also I put my like email, like I have a LinkedIn. So putting all of my, like my resume, my experiences, like demonstrating what I do. So like mock trial, for example, that got me into the Supreme Court. Being able to like be like a writer. I'm a really big writer for mock trial rather than being a lawyer, because I know where I need to fine tune and I know what I need to work on. So writing was a big deal, and like showing my writing, like what I wrote, how I prepped the lawyers to like go on trial and whatnot. That really demonstrated itself when I got an internship at a Supreme Court, because I know the Supreme Court does not let a lot of high schoolers in. So that was like a really big deal. And then Georgetown, it was more so my leadership roles in that I've had. So my experiences was also a big deal. So that's how I got invited to those things. Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of off topic, but about LinkedIn, I know you have to be like 16 to make an account. So this summer, I went to this one-day experience at Wharton, and it was like a networking event with not only alumni, but also professors from Wharton. So they did a whole like panel of speakers, and the students who signed up for the event got to hear the speakers. And then after, we got to meet the alumni and the people who went to Wharton. And I realized that, and I had already been thinking about like making a LinkedIn and all of that, but I realized you have to be 16, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not 16 yet, but when sophomore year rolls around, like, best believe I'm going to be on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Like,
and I definitely recommend it to people who want to get more connected to like internships and whatnot. That was a really big space for me. And when I started it, I wasn't 16, but I hadn't posted anything until I was 16. So it was just more like my name, my school, like more information about me. Yeah, so I would just recommend to make it. I know like going to the college expos, I went to a HBCU college expo last year, but there were more than HBCUs there. That's how I got connected to Stanford. That's how I got that invite. So yeah.
that is so cool. Where do you find all these like college expo opportunities?
Instagram.
Oh,
I'm very like, I like fine tuned my For You page. So I was like, I get like a whole bunch of like internships, like jobs needed. So yeah.
oh, that's so me. My literal like Instagram reel feed is all like how to get into Harvard, how
Yes.
to like all
Yes.
that. And then like my friends will be scrolling through my feed, and they're like, dang, Sophia, like, what? But you're a nerd. Like,
Yeah.
what is this? Like, it's not brain rot. It's like meant for people who are like in college,
Right.
and I'm in high school. So, but yeah, do you feel student council is a form of early advocacy? Why or why not?
Oh, absolutely. You're advocating for more than yourself. You're advocating for your environment, your student population, your class. So it's definitely a form of early advocacy, not only for their opinions, but for yourself. So like say your opinion gets like overheard or not really valued, you know how to advocate for yourself, and you know how to be like, hey, like I was going to say this, but it wasn't really the time. There were a lot of other opinions being shouted out. So understanding like your self-worth is also a big deal in student council, and knowing that your opinion may not always be heard in that moment, but knowing the time and place to share it and who to share it to. So knowing like your higher ups, who you should talk to about a certain topic. That's also an early form of advocacy, and that's something Georgetown really taught me, was have to advocate for others, the less fortunate people who are silenced, often silenced. That was something Georgetown really taught me in the Supreme Court, with the whole thing with the immigrants being sent back. That was something they really taught us, to be like, hey, like stand up for what you believe in, not for what you other people think you should believe in. So knowing your sense of worth.
Yeah, so do you think leadership and just being involved in so many leadership organizations has helped you learn more about yourself and your voice?
Oh, definitely. I would say being a part of Jack and Jill helped me more learn about like my African American history, and like knowing like, okay, I'm always going to be the smaller amount of the percentage, but knowing I have to work twice as hard to get just to the same level as somebody else who may be of lighter complexion. That was something Jack and Jill has really taught me, knowing the value of like my skin and the sense, like my hair, like not being able to be like easily intimidated about that fact. School really taught me how to, just advocate for my own opinion. I'm very opinionated, but understanding like, hey, it's not always about you. That's something school really taught me, and saying like, hey, like listen to everybody else, like listen to what other people have to say, and like implementing it into one solid thing. And then Georgetown and the Supreme Court really taught me that everybody else may have the same opinion as you, but a different version of it. So being able to really combine those opinions to get one single outcome is also something that's a really big deal.
On that note, Cam and I just did a student leadership retreat, and it was like this ropes course. And at first I was like, wait, how does a ropes course even relate to student leadership and just like advocacy in general? And we were doing these like challenges, and we were like climbing trees and things like that. And after each activity, we'd have a debrief.
Right.
And I don't remember the exact question, but I just remember it was something along the lines of good leadership. And I think I said something like, success is collective, not individualized. And I think that really relates to your point about people may have different variations of one idea, but just the idea of like making sure that it's cohesive and making sure that we do in the end come up with one final result. I think that's really, really important. And when you have these big personalities, it's kind of like bulls, like butting heads, you know? But it really is important to, like you said, know when to step down, and just being very selfless. I think that's a really big component of being a good leader. So, what's the most challenging part about being involved in so many different leadership positions?
Knowing how to prioritize and time management is something I noticed that is a really big deal and something I really struggle with. And knowing when to turn certain characteristics off. So like in my vice president role, I have to run meetings. I have to talk to more people. I have to advocate a little bit more than I would have to do in student council, where I don't necessarily have like the president or vice president role, but I can't act like the vice president or president because that's not my role in that setting. So understanding like when to turn certain stuff off and knowing like when to let other people speak is also a really big deal, and something that really kind of like flips depending on the environment I'm in, because being vice president of a chapter, I have to command a certain amount of authority, especially being a child and a peer, and like even adults who are like the president, vice president of my chapter, like they have to like respect me the same amount I have to respect them, because we're both in leadership roles, just the age gap is a little bit bigger. So that's something I really struggle with between being in different leadership roles, and even in clubs. Like I wouldn't necessarily have a big leadership role, but understanding like the role I have and being a leader in that role. So say for service club, I would organize the events we would go to. That was my job, and that was something I had to be like, okay, I have to do all this, all that, but understanding like, hey, you don't have to do all that. You could distribute it a little bit more. So I would say that's something I really struggle with. And at the Supreme Court, I was placed in a role where I had to like present to the whole Supreme Court like what our findings and what we learned. And taking upon that role was a big deal. I mean, that's the Supreme Court of the United States. So just it was really intimidating, but being like, hey, like you got to step up, you got to have a certain level of confidence. So yeah,
I really agree with that point, because I feel like there's so much fear around balancing so many different positions, whether it be in leadership, whether it be in sports. But it's just like you really have to be adaptable, and you have to know, like you said, maybe you have to turn off certain characteristic traits when you're doing certain activities. Like for me, not only do I have a podcast, I also play volleyball. I'm a varsity athlete, and it does get really hard to just being able to think about solely what I'm doing in the moment and not letting my other activities bleed into the activity that I'm currently doing. Because if you don't and you let them bleed into each other, you're going to crash. If you, for example, like if you schedule 2 meetings at once, you're not going to be able to make both. So it's just about recognizing that, yes, we are doing a lot as high schoolers, but you have to be able to turn your thinking cap off for certain activities. So
right. Yeah. And I can definitely relate to that, seeing, varsity track, varsity tennis, that, and knowing like, oh, that's like a level of sport that I have to like perform well at, and I can't let other stuff bleed into that space. But also knowing that I'm more than just an athlete, I'm more than just a leader, I'm a person, so I can only do so much. And understanding time management is a really big skill to have when you're being a leader. And I think if you have that, then you should definitely do student council. You should definitely get involved in those spaces where you have a chance to be a leader.
Why do you think teens' voices matter in this decision making?
I think teens have a very fresh perspective on the world, on certain ideas, like specifically you're using your platform to connect to the world about certain teen ideas that we're all having in certain aspects of life where we know we're struggling, but where we can provide that help to those who are also struggling. And then you also provide the space to where, like, it's a safe space where you can communicate any thought you have. And that's a really fresh idea. And me, I can speak to myself when I say I have a very fresh idea. It's more of a passion project, so to speak, but it's about providing free books for kids because I do know, like, the generation coming up is quote unquote iPad kids and using technology a lot more than we grew up on. So, and I know reading is dying out and have a big passion for reading. So being able to provide a space where the kids can like come, like a little free library, one might say, where they can come bring books that they've necessarily outgrown. And I could provide books that are free and upcycling and reconnecting everybody. And it's just, I think that's a very fresh idea. And I know other people have fresh ideas like about upcycling fashion, like how you talked about in your previous episode, which I think is a very fresh idea, and you providing that space to demonstrate those fresh ideas. So I think teenagers have the same level of knowledge, the same level of self-awareness to be able to speak about their opinions and for it to matter. I just think they need to be provided the space to share that idea. And I think you're doing a wonderful job at providing that.
Oh, thank you so much, Cam. That means so much to me. But yeah, bouncing off of that idea, I really do think that one person or one group can make a difference. It oftentimes may be scary because if you try to do something and you put a lot of effort into it and you're gonna be like, wait, am I even gonna make a difference? It's like it can be somebody really liking your idea about something, or like one person liking my podcast, like small things like that really do make a difference. And I think it's so important to just be able to speak out and express your voices and ideas because you never know what may come out of that. So just being able to advocate for yourself and not being afraid to express your ideas and what you believe in, that's really important. Oh, and also staying true to your morals, I'd say. Like, don't just do something because other people like it. I think a part of being in student leadership is not only including everybody on their ideas, but also sometimes you have your own ideas that are good, and maybe just bring it up and see what happens.
Right. And having a good support system as well. Like how you said, when somebody says, oh, your podcast is really amazing, like that really motivates you to be like, oh yeah, I am making a difference, and motivates you to continue. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then what advice would you give to someone who wants to get more included but feels nervous?
I would say to just do it. I personally, freshman year, I didn't do a lot. I only joined one club, which was mock trial. I didn't do student council. I wasn't really involved in that respect, but I would say I had a big personality. I talked to a lot of people, so I didn't necessarily need a lot of clubs. But for someone who's like nervous about trying it, I would definitely just say do it, but also know yourself. Know if you have like a certain like shy personality that you would have to come like step out of your comfort zone to be, say, a part of student council or a part of a leadership position. Just understanding like what you need to do in order to be a part of that. And even if you don't like it, like you can always just be like, hey, this really isn't my speed. Hey, I don't necessarily like this, but like it's at least you tried. Like you never know until you try kind of situation. And I also just think that if you're like nervous about it or worried you don't have time for it, like that's like a very like you can fix like the I don't have time for it. It's just about time management. Like you shouldn't limit yourself to certain aspects or certain things in high school just because you quote unquote don't have time for it.
I actually was just talking to some freshmen at orientation about this and joining student leadership, and they were like, oh, I don't have the time for it. And I think, and I am a victim of saying I don't have the time to do things. I'm a victim of saying like I can't hang out with you because I have homework to do or I have something to do. I really do think that as long as you put your mind to it, there are so many different things that you can do. I remember when I first wanted to start a podcast, I wanted to start a podcasting club within my school. But then I was like, wait, should I really confine myself to the administrators and other people and just have to worry about so many different things when I can start a podcast under my own name, my own brand, and now I have the freedom and the autonomy to make my own decisions. I don't have to confine myself to things that other people are saying. And yeah, just bring it back to the point of you really do have the time to do anything you put your mind to. Like I said, if you are ever feeling worried about juggling quote unquote too many things, there are so many different people. Like, I've had so many people on my podcast who are doing so many different things that you wouldn't even think a high schooler could do, but they are doing it because they aren't confining themselves to other people. They're not confining themselves to the worries and the fears that are in their head. So if you are feeling nervous to do something, like, you can literally do anything that you're passionate about. Like, Cam, you're doing a thing with the books because you're passionate about reading. Like, everybody has their own uniqueness and individuality to them, and that's a beautiful thing. So why don't you just use that to your own advantage and make something out of that, because something really can be created out of a small passion. And then, how do you think any student can be a leader in their own way?
Just stepping outside of your comfort zone, knowing your limits is also something I would really preface. You don't want to do too much, you don't want to do too little, but stepping outside of your comfort zone and being like, okay, I got this, like, there's no need to worry. That was the big thing with the ropes course. I would tie that back into it. I have a fear of heights, so being all the way up there, I had to like have a certain level of confidence. I had to be like, okay, I got this. And I think that really ties into student council or any leadership position. Yeah. And just, knowing who you are and knowing what you can and can't do and your boundaries, like morals and stuff like that.
And I feel like you don't have to be necessarily extroverted, like, and we were talking about this earlier, but you can literally be someone who's quiet and or someone who isn't confident enough to bring their ideas to the table. But it's just about recognizing that you are your own person. You do have the ability to do that. So even if you are too scared, just do it, because you never know what may come out of it. You never know what opportunities are there for you, waiting for you when you say that. There have been so many times where I was too scared about doing something, but then something really big came out of it. For example, like, just recently I did something as posting a podcast reel to promote the podcast, and then I ended up getting this really, really big opportunity out of it because I had the confidence to post that reel and ask people to repost my reel. Like, I think you really do have to put yourself out there and be okay with taking risks, because if you don't take risks, you never know what's going to happen.
I think taking risks is also something, but understanding like you don't have to do something like completely like crazy, just knowing a risk to make a difference, a risk with purpose is something I would really preface. Something that is going to make a genuine impact, something that is going to like better the community and yourself and your overall experience in high school or any leadership position or any club you're in. Just understanding like your opinion and your purpose in that role is really important.
Yeah, they really do matter. And like I said, like, one person, one group can make a difference. So yeah, just to wrap up, Cam, thank you so much for talking with me today. I think you offered so many great insights about leadership, about student advocacy, that I think a lot of people could really benefit off of. And yeah, like, again, like, if you're a quiet person or if you don't think that leadership is your thing, just try it out, because you never know if you don't try. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching this episode of Let's Talk Matcha, and I hope that we can see you all in the next episode. Thank you.
Bye.